Hi everyone, my name is Anna or Ania. I'm a Vue developer for almost 3 years in Divante. And today I would like to talk a little about the hottest topic of the season, which is accessibility and why it is so important. First things first, what the hell is A11Y? When you browse for accessibility on the web, then you tend to meet with this weird term A11Y, which might seem so strange and, I don't know, leatherless. Basically, that's a shortcut for accessibility. That was a big shocker for me. I don't know how about you, but it means a lot in web development right now. I found some cool definition for you because accessibility covers a lot of topics and there's no single correct definition for this one. But basically, accessibility, or A11Y, is a measure of how accessible a computer system is to all people, including those with disabilities or impairments. It concerns both software and hardware and how they are configured together in order to enable a disabled or impaired person to use that computer system successfully. That was long. For me, accessibility is how we can make the web page functional for people with some kind of disabilities. For me, this is like a perfect example of how technology can actually improve human life. So it's really, really cool, and I think you should care. So let's answer, why should we care? First of all, imagine that you are not able to use the web for some reasons. Accessibility provides us with rules that let people with disabilities surf the web. I don't know, imagine that you met a killer on the road and he cut off your hands and the only way to escape is to use your computer. But there's a keyboard and a mouse and you have no hands, so how should I do that? That's accessibility. Also, people with disabilities, this is not a small group of people. I was actually surprised and I found some cool data. According to the US Census Bureau, nearly 1 in 5 Americans, which is 57 million people, so let's be honest, that's a lot, have a disability of some sort. And if you still think this is not like a lot, then let me tell you just this, that more people has some kind of disability than there are people using Internet Explorer. Mind-blowing, I know. And you still support Internet Explorer. And if it doesn't convince you still, then I can tell you that this is required by law in US for quite some time, at least for all the government pages and public health institutions. And in 2019, the European Accessibility Act became law. So now if you code for any kind of government system, for example, for your vaccination signups, then you must provide some basic accessibility features. This is pretty groundbreaking. And finally, don't be a jerk, because we can make these people's lives a bit easier with some code, surely. It's still like maybe 2 to 5 more hours of coding, but it's a big difference. So let's make our apps accessible. I will guide you with some basic rules. If you need some more, if you feel like you want to dig into the topic, then the best way to do that will be to go to the A11Y project or the official WCAG accessibility guideline. And the A11Y project is extremely user-friendly website. And you can find a very cool feature that is a checklist with some basic accessibility rules that you can add to your website with specific instructions on how to do that with some examples. So it's a really great source of knowledge. And if you want something even more complex, then feel free to go to the W3.org, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline, but it's not as user-friendly as the A11Y project. It is more like technical documentation, in my opinion. So if you're not really into searching through the numbers, then just go to A11Y project, and this will be good enough for your website, for sure. Are there any code rules? Basically, we have like 3 classes of accessibility right now. The single A, which is essential. And basically, I think we should run towards the single, at least for most of the pages. We have the double A, which is ideal support. And it is required for the government pages and public body websites, like I told you before. But it's also good to aim for the better. So ideal support and double A is perfect. And we have triple A, which is very, very professional, if I can say. And this is typically reserved for very content-specific websites for people with certain disabilities, and designing such pages is very complex. But let's say we are aiming for this double A. Well, coding, thinking of accessibility is a lot about changing our mindset. I don't really like this word, but let's call it the grandma method. So each page, each functionality, each app you are coding, let's just think about your grandma. Can your grandma actually use this website? Can she use this functionality? So you have to think of things like, is the typography visible? Is the color contrast good enough? Is my page readable? Are letters big enough, etc., etc. So the simpler the page, the better, and the more think through functionalities, the better. So think about your grandmas. Of course, there are some coding rules, and in my opinion, those are really good coding practices in general. So you can stick to them even if you're not thinking about accessibility. And the easiest one, and the one that you should think of from the very beginning of your project, is to keep your HTML template semantic and structured. And why? A lot of people with some kind of motor disabilities or blindness use screen readers. And screen readers are basing only on the HTML tags. So using everything as a div is not the best approach. So you have to use the header and articles sometimes, because screen readers do not read JavaScript, even if it's super cool and the prettiest. So keep your HTML structured and semantic. This one is more for designers or developers who also design the page, because I know there are people who does that, unicorns. When you design a web page, always keep it readable. Like here you have a perfect example, which is the Stack Overflow page in 2 versions. On the right, you have some unicorns and glitter, and you can see that this is not too readable or distinguishable. And on the left, there's the classic Stack Overflow we all know, and this is much more nice for your eyes. And if I had to choose one thing that can completely change the accessibility of your page, that would be keyboard navigation. Many users with some kind of motor disabilities, they rely on this keyboard. They do not use the mouse for some reasons. And they use it with using the tab button and just navigating through the page. And this indicates this typical blue outline you can see somewhere in the internet. And a lot of developers tend to remove it, or clients tend to remove it. Well, if you remove it, then what happens? Those people cannot navigate the page. That's why never remove the focus outline, ever. I know it's ugly. So there are some workarounds we can apply. First of all, you can style this outline. There are some basic default CSS rules. You can apply for the outline. For example, you can make it dotted, you can make it smaller, thinner, you can change the color. So you can somehow style it so it's not that ugly. But if you really need to change that, and then you can try to style the element itself. So you can remove the outline then, and just add some specific color or behavior for the focus state of the element. And there is a third way, which I like the most, but it's a bit more complex, but I'm sure you can handle that. You can remove outlines for mouse users only. and if a mouse event is detected, then you can apply those rules using JavaScript, or for example, in Vue, you can achieve that with using some custom directives. I did that for one of the projects, I think it was a year ago. So this is some old piece of code I did with some custom directive for removing focus outline. And well, it's not perfect. I believe I will do that a bit better. And also you can change, I mean, the way we are writing custom directs is a big change now, but it worked and the client was happy. Another thing that you can add to your web page that will actually improve the A11Y of your project is Skiplink. I found some cool example on Vue.js documentation. And basically, Skiplink are invisible links that appear only if you click on the tab button. And then once you click it, it skips you to the content you actually want to read. So you don't navigate through all those pointless links. Pretty useful. It's not that common in a lot of pages, but I think it's very, very important and it should be added as well and thinking of. So we have some basic HTML template. We have some CSS styling, nothing completely too complex. And magic happens with some water and some JavaScript as always. And on the Vue.js documentation page, you can find a live example. I'm not trying to do that here because I'm afraid this will break the presentation, but you can see that the skip to main content link appeared once we click a tab, and a blue outline is also visible. So pretty useful. You can impress someone with adding this to your page. Another thing that developers tend to forget, and I'm also guilty, is ARIA labels and alternative texts. This is super important for any kind of functional elements like images that are clickable. Because screen readers rely on those alternative texts when reading the web page and descriptions. For example, here you have a bag of Doritos, and well, if there would be no alternative text, then the screen reader would just skip it. And with the alt, you can actually read it. So that's pretty cool. And last but not least, choose your colors carefully. Remember that there are a lot of people with color blindness, also other people. And using violet text or purple text on dark blue is really not the best idea. There's some online color contrast checkers where you can input the background color and the text color and see if it fits the accessibility standards of the color contrast. This is pretty important. So make sure you remember about that as well. And what are the next steps? Well, you can learn more about accessibility. First, like I said before, the A11Y project checklist is extremely useful. And even without huge technical backgrounds, you can easily go through the checklist and see how accessible your web page is. Also, I'm always I'm talking a lot about the WCAG guidelines. Those are pretty complex, but I think also useful, and you can find answers to a lot of your questions and more complex accessibility questions there. And also, I want you to see the GAP page, actually, because I think this is pretty accessible, and they have some cool features and cool solutions. So if you're interested in this topic, or if you want to see how Skiplinks works in real life, then go to thegap.com and just use the tab and see how you can navigate through the page using no mouse, for example. Thank you all, and I'm passing my voice to Łukasz.